What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got our Week 7 of Fantasy Football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Today's video is brought to you guys by Birddogs. And look, I know we're all searching for that perfect pair of shorts or pants that offers the best style, the best comfort, the best bang for your buck. Well, guess what? That search is over because Birddogs offers all of that and so much more. If you're looking for shorts, they have a ton of options with activewear, casual wear, or even beachwear. On top of that, their pants have a selection of khakis, joggers, and sweatpants. So what are you waiting for? Regardless of the occasion of the season, get yourself the most stylish, the most comfortable pair of pants with a built-in liner from Birddogs.com. And if you use promo code ADP today, you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Again, that's Birddogs.com, code ADP, and you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Make sure to check out birddogs.com, link in the description. And we kick off week 7 with the Saints at the Cardinals on Thursday. And a lot of interesting things here, one way or another, again, unfortunately, due to injuries. For the Saints, it's injuries at the quarterback position. Andy Dalton getting banged up this last week. Jameis Winston has been hurt and sitting for several weeks now, so that quarterback position has a little bit of a question mark. You're going to have to track that as we get closer to kickoff. But Michael Thomas likely not playing, neither is Jarvis Landry. So Chris Olave, if he plays, is going to be that next man up. And regardless who the quarterback is, I think he's going to be the top pass-catching target for the Saints here. The Cardinals defense doesn't scare me. I have him as a low-end wide receiver 2 on the week. Much rather take a chance on him than a Marquez Callaway who, he's been, I'd say, nothing more than a one-hit wonder. Don't go chasing, 6-7 targets from the week prior. For the Cardinals, injuries as well. Unfortunately, Marquise Brown, his absolutely insane start to the season is going to be cut short. He's going to miss an extended period of time. But good news for the Cardinals offense, you do get DeAndre Hopkins returning. So a lot of that volume is now going to go his way. And he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the team. And basically in that Marquise Brown role now, I have him as a low-end wide receiver 1. Then Rondale Moore, I think, can be a sneaky start. Yes, the Cardinals traded for Robbie Anderson after Marquise Brown got injured, but to me, that doesn't really mean all that much. Rondale Moore should still be the number 2 on this team, and he's got more chemistry with Kyler Murray. I don't want to too heavily invest in this Cardinals offense with how inconsistent they have been, so I'm sitting Robbie Anderson. I think Rondale Moore, similar to last week in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. Then Packers at the Commanders. I really only want to start Allen Lazard here for Green Bay. So the main thing with the Packers, obviously they have been very, very underwhelming. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's just the weapons around him, but we can't argue with the fact that Lazard has been very productive. Usually he's right at the top of the team lead in targets and volume. So from that perspective, he's valuable. But also when you look at his usage in the red zone, makes him even that much more fantasy friendly. I have him as a low to mid-level wide receiver 2. I wouldn't get too cute here with the other Packer wide receivers. I know Randall Cobb's going to miss some time, but Dobbs, with how this Packers offense is playing right now, a little bit lackluster, I don't want to too heavily invest into it. And then for Washington, the big news for them, Carson Wentz injured, so that means Taylor Heinicke back as the starting quarterback. I actually think that can be a little bit of an increase, not too much for some of these wide receivers' fantasy value. I think this offense now has a little bit more passing upside. We'll see. Heinicke not afraid to sling it. I think McLaurin is going to be boom or bust, kind of similar to last year when it was him and Heinicke. I have him as a low to mid-level wide receiver 2. And Samuel, I don't think he quite has that chemistry with Heinicke like he maybe did with Carson Wentz. I have him in the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. I think McLaurin is now going to return a little bit more value. Moving on, we've got the Browns at the Ravens. So here, I'm going to continue with the trend of Amari Cooper is the main Browns wide receiver that I want to start as long as Jacoby Brissett is under center. I think the Browns rushing attack will bounce back. This game is in Baltimore. It's a divisional clash. Wouldn't be too shocked if the passing yards aren't too many here. So Cooper, to me, highest upside guy. I have him as a low on wide receiver 2. For Baltimore, is Rashad Bateman going to play this week? That's the main question. If he does, this Browns defense has not been all too great this season. I think Bateman is going to be a boomer bust low-end wide receiver 2. If he plays, I would not be starting Devin Duvernay. Just not a lot of passing volume outside of Mark Andrews and then one more other wide receiver. So in that case, if Bateman plays, you sit Duvernay. And if Bateman doesn't, then I think Devin Duvernay can, fit that similar type of boomer bust, low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 role. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, again, don't want to too heavily invest in this game in the Browns pass catchers. I have him as a sit. Moving on, we got the Bucs at the Panthers. I'm only interested in the Buccaneers pass catchers here. Yes, they're coming off a very bad loss versus the Steelers. Are you kidding me? Again, another one of these big-name teams, similar to the Packers, that isn't necessarily delivering. But they should have a good fantasy performance here versus the Panthers, who are, arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst. I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both going to be kind of mid to high-end wide receiver 2s. It just depends on if this game is a complete blowout. If that's the case, then the Bucs can kind of just turn and milk the clock. And these pass catchers not going to be too much of a factor as the game progresses. For Carolina, DJ Moore, look, he's getting the volume. Robbie Anderson was traded, but he's facing a tough defense, and PJ Walker under center just wasn't providing a lot of volume. So that has me really concerned. Even if you start DJ Moore, which I understand in some situations you might have to, he is very, very boomer bust. It's pretty much just Christian McCaffrey for this Carolina offense, and then nobody else. Just major question marks. So I would rather play it safe here. I think Moore is way too risky. I realize he could go off, but I would rather him, potentially go off on my bench here, considering how big of a question mark he is in general. Then Russell Gage, it's a 2 wide receiver offense for Tampa Bay. I'm sitting Gage here. Then Falcons at the Bengals. I'll start Drake London, but I think similar to some of these other guys, he's kind of a boomer bust wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 2. Yes, he has the upside. Don't get me wrong, he does. But the Falcons on a week-to-week basis, they're just not consistent with their pass attempts, with that passing yardage. That's what worries me here. I wouldn't be shocked if this game is a little bit lower scoring. That's why I would only start Drake London here. And again, I do have some reservations. For the Bengals, though, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Chase coming off an insane game. We knew he was going to rebound in a big way. This Falcons defense doesn't scare me. I think Chase and T. Higgins are going to be 2 solid starts. And then Tyler Boyd, I have as a sit. It's very tough for 3 wide receivers on one offense all to go off. Unless, the Bengals score 30-plus points and they're all through the air. So with how bad the Falcons defense, has been for the majority of the season, I think we could see a decent Joe Mixon game here. I would rather sit Tyler Boyd. Moving on, we got the Lions at the Cowboys. So Lions coming off the bye week. Is Amon-Ra St. Brown going to play? If he does, he is a start. And he is, I would say, just because first game back from injury, kind of in that high-end wide receiver 2 category. If he doesn't, though, Josh Reynolds, I think, is a very solid flex play and could be, what he has done in the last 2 weeks without Amon-Ra, and that's, get you between 10 and 15 points, if not more, if you throw in a touchdown. In that scenario, I would start Josh Reynolds. DJ Shark, he had been banged up. I think Reynolds kind of was climbing up in favor with Jared Goff as well. So I wouldn't get too cute with DJ Shark here, especially if Amon-Ra plays. And then if Amon-Ra plays, I think Reynolds is just a little bit too risky. For the Cowboys, Dak Prescott expected to make his return from injury. CeeDee Lamb's value goes way up. If you held on to him, good for you. Now that, return on investment should be there, and I think he could be a low-end wide receiver 1. And then Michael Gallup, to me, now becomes the clear-cut number 2. No more Noah Brown. I think Gallup is going to be a low-end wide receiver 2. Again, very favorable matchup here for the Cowboys versus one of the worst defenses in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. I wouldn't start too many other wide receivers, though. Again, Noah Brown is a sit. I think the Cowboys' rushing attack is going to have something to say in this game as well. Afterwards, Giants at the Jaguars. Really not a lot of action here as far as pass catchers. I'm only taking a chance on Christian Kirk. I think this is going to be a lower scoring affair, which I think further puts a cap on the pass catcher ceiling here. But I think Kirk is still the wide receiver you want for Jacksonville. He's cooled down these last couple of weeks, but he's still been producing kind of at that low to mid-level wide receiver 2 range. So I'm kind of projecting similar type of output for him here. I'm not starting a single Giants wide receiver. That has been the case pretty much for the last several weeks, if not month, and that's kind of served us all right. I'm saying that again, and I'll stick by it. For the Jaguars, I think it'll be a lower scoring affair. I think Zay Jones is the number 2 on this team, but I don't like him in this game, so I'm sitting him. Then Colts at the Titans. I'm really only interested in Michael Pittman here for the Colts if Jonathan Taylor plays. If Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines don't play, then I think you can make an argument that Alec Pierce is going to see a lot of receiving volume as kind of that next weapon for the Colts. And then I would put him in the starting lineup. But if I had to guess, I think Jonathan Taylor probably does return this week and plays. So I have Pierce and Campbell, who finally did something, arguably for the first time this season, really big game. I wouldn't chase the points there. I would sit him if Jonathan Taylor plays. And then for the Titans, they're banged up at the wide receiver position. They're a run-first team. I'm sitting all the Titan wide receivers. Just 2 boomer busts there. Then Texans at the Raiders. I'm starting the top 2 guys here for these teams, Brendan Cooks and then Devontae Adams for the Raiders. Cooks is a low-end wide receiver 2. Definitely has high upside, could be a high-end wide receiver too, but a lot of things have to go his way. Good thing here is the Raiders defense not all that scary, so I think he does have a relatively high ceiling this week. For the Raiders, Devontae Adams, he's a wide receiver 1. He's a top 5, arguably, wide receiver every single week. Obviously not as consistent without Aaron Rodgers, but still very, very valuable. I would start him here versus the Texans. I wouldn't get too cute with Hunter Renfrow. He wasn't seeing a lot of action in his first game back. Maybe that was just because it was his first game back after injury. But I could see Waller more involved. I could see another big Josh Jacobs day. So I'd rather sit Hunter Renfrow. Afterwards, Jets at the Broncos. I really contemplated not starting a single damn wide receiver here. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, it's the Jets defense. I could see the Broncos having some success there. Courtland Sutton is the only guy I would go with. To me, he's still the best wide receiver option for the Broncos. Yes, there might be some, variation from week to week. Judy has one big play, something like that, and that kind of, makes his numbers seem better. But I would still rather go with Sutton. But he is, again, I would say similar to DJ Moore in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, boom or bust range. Also keep an eye on what happens with Russell Wilson. He's dealing with some injuries. But then for the Jets, since Zach Wilson has returned, sure, there's been victories, but these wide receivers have not been consistent. I'm sitting them here. And if I almost sat Courtland Sutton, you better believe I'm sitting Jerry Jeudy. Afterwards, Chiefs at the 49ers. I'll start Juju Smith-Schuster. Yes, we got a huge game from him this last week versus the Bills, but I should say, do not expect this every single week. A big reason for that was because, he broke 1 or 2 tackles on like a 40-yard touchdown. And, that was a big reason why he had some success. Otherwise, he would have been hovering around that like 10 to 12, 13 points that he's been averaging these last couple of weeks. So I still have him as a, low-end wide receiver too. And then for the 49ers, Deebo Samuel, Brendan Ayuk, I think they're both solid starts. I think they're both, mid-level wide receiver 2s. Deebo Samuel has the higher upside because of his usage in kind of rushing situations. But, as long as George Kittle kind of does his blocking role, I think that these guys have some nice upside. And then I wouldn't start MVS or Mecole Hardman. I think it's going to be, Travis Kelce, then Juju Smith. Just we've seen that these wide receivers for the Chiefs way too hard to trust without Tyreek Hill. But Juju is still the main one to go with. However, again, not an ideal situation, not a wide receiver one. So for that reason, sitting Hardman and MVS. Afterwards, Seahawks at the Chargers. I'll start the top 2 names here for these 2 teams. The Seahawks, Lockett and DK Metcalf, coming off, disappointing performances, but they didn't really have to do all that much versus the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals were absolutely awful, so the Seahawks pretty much just ran the ball, and that's all they needed to do. I don't think that'll be the case here versus the Chargers. I think they will bounce back. I think they're both low to mid-level wide receiver 2s. For the Chargers, is this finally when we get Keenan Allen to return and to play and to contribute to your fantasy football rosters? I sure as God hope so. If he does, I have him as a mid to high end wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. And then Mike Williams coming off an absolute dud. But the Seahawks defense doesn't scare me. I think Herbert will bounce back. I think Mike Williams should be a low to mid-level wide receiver too. And then I'm sitting Josh Palmer. If Keenan Allen especially returns, then I think he is, the odd man out, that wide receiver 3. You can even argue he's behind Austin Eckler. I wouldn't go chasing the volume, so I'm sitting Josh Palmer. Then Steelers at the Dolphins. I really only want to start Deontay Johnson for the Steelers. I mean, Kenny Pickett got banged up. We don't know what the status of the quarterback situation is going to be, but if it's Trubisky, we know he was mostly targeting Deontay Johnson, so that's what I'm looking at here. Regardless, though, I think whoever you start for the Steelers, they are a low-end wide receiver, too. You're just praying for volume, primarily in PPR formats. For the Dolphins, Tua should hopefully make his return, which is absolutely insane, but that's what people are saying. Reports currently coming out of Miami. So if that happens, the upside for Tyreek and Jalen Waddle should be pretty high. The Steelers are banged up in the secondary. I would have Hill and Jalen Waddle both as low-end wide receiver 1s. And then I wouldn't go chasing the points with Chase Claypool. Again, that's pretty much his first big game this entire season. I'm sitting him here. There's not going to be multiple fantasy-relevant wide receivers for the Steelers. Only Deontay Johnson for me. Then Bears at the Patriots. Again, another game where I was contemplating not starting any of these wide receivers. I don't love the situation. The Patriots are kind of heating up. I have a decent amount of faith in this Patriots defense. I think they're going to absolutely shut down the Bears offense and make Justin Fields beat them with his arm. That's not his forte. I'm sitting Darnell Mooney as a result. The only Patriots wide receiver I start is probably Jacoby Myers, mostly in PPR formats. Again, we don't know who's going to start. Is it going to be Mac Jones? Is it going to be Zappy? Is he going to win the starting quarterback job? All TBD, but to me, Myers is still kind of the main New England wide receiver you want to go with. A low-end wide receiver 2, primarily in PPR formats, also in that wide receiver 3 range. And then I'd sit Devontae Parker. I think the Patriots are going to be able to run on the Chicago Bears, so they're not going to need too much from their pass catchers. But with that, we wrap up our Week 7 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. As always, if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.